In the heart of an ancient forest, where sunlight filtered through a dense canopy of emerald leaves and painted golden patterns on the mossy ground, there stood a village unlike any other. The villagers called it Kael'thar, though few outsiders ever stumbled upon its hidden paths or heard whispers of its existence. It was said that Kael'thar had been built by hands long forgotten, its stone walls weathered smooth by centuries of wind and rain, yet somehow untouched by time itself. The air here carried a peculiar stillness, as if the very trees held their breath to listen. Among these people lived Erin, a young woman whose curiosity often set her apart from her peers. She spent her days wandering beyond the boundaries most dared not cross, venturing into the deeper reaches of the forest where shadows danced with secrets older than memory. Her hair, dark as midnight, framed eyes that sparkled with questions no one else seemed willing, or perhaps able, to ask. To the elders, she was both admired for her courage and feared for her relentless need to uncover truths buried beneath layers of tradition and silence. The traditions of Kael'thar were steeped in reverence for something they called the First Ones. Stories passed down through generations spoke of beings who once walked among them. Tall, luminous figures whose wisdom shaped every aspect of life before vanishing without explanation. These tales wove themselves into daily rituals, offerings left at carved altars, prayers whispered under starlit skies, dances performed around flickering fires during festivals meant to honor those who came before. Yet, despite this devotion, little was truly known about the First Ones beyond fragmented myths and faded carvings etched into sacred stones scattered throughout the woods. Erin's fascination with the First Ones bordered on obsession. While others accepted their disappearance as inevitable, a mystery too vast for mortal minds to unravel, she couldn't shake the feeling that answers lay just out of reach, waiting patiently for someone brave enough to seek them. Every artifact unearthed, every glyph deciphered only deepened her resolve. And so, while the rest of Kael'thar clung to what remained of their shared history, Erin dreamed of bridging the gap between past and present, determined to understand why the First Ones had vanished and what connection they might still hold to humanity. One mist-laden morning, when the world seemed cloaked in silver gauze, Erin ventured farther than ever before. Guided by intuition rather than map, she followed a winding trail marked only by faint impressions in the earth. Marks too deliberate to be natural but too subtle for anyone less observant to notice. As she pressed onward, the forest grew quieter, the usual symphony of birdsong and rustling leaves giving way to an eerie hush. Even the air felt heavier, charged with an energy that prickled against her skin like static electricity. After hours of walking, the path opened unexpectedly onto a clearing bathed in pale light. At its center stood a monolith unlike anything Erin had seen before. Towering above her, it shimmered faintly, as though alive with some inner luminescence. Its surface bore intricate carvings, swirling patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. They weren't mere decorations. They pulsed with meaning, each line and curve hinting at stories far older than the village itself. But what drew Erin's gaze, and froze her in place, was the figure engraved at the base of the stone. It was unmistakably human, or at least, it bore an uncanny resemblance to humanity. Tall and slender, the figure exuded grace and power, its features sharp yet serene. What startled Erin most was how familiar it looked, not just in form but in essence. The proportions of its limbs, the curve of its jawline, even the faint suggestion of expression carved into the stone mirrored traits she saw every day among her own people. And yet, there was something other about it, a quality that defied description but resonated deeply within her chest. It wasn't alien, it was ancestral. Her fingers trembled as she reached out to touch the carving, half expecting the cold hardness of stone. Instead, warmth radiated beneath her palm, spreading up her arm like sunlight breaking through clouds. A low hum filled the air, resonating in her bones, and suddenly images flooded her mind. Visions of towering cities made of crystal and light, of beings moving with effortless elegance, their voices harmonizing in tones that transcended language. She saw gatherings under starlit skies, ceremonies conducted with solemn reverence, and faces that echoed hers in ways both comforting and unsettling. When the visions faded, Erin found herself kneeling on the damp grass, breathless and shaken. The monolith stood silent once more, its glow dimmed but not extinguished. She knew then, with absolute certainty, that this was no ordinary relic. This was a doorway, a fragment of the First One's legacy left behind for those brave enough to find it. And now, whether by chance or design, she had stepped through. Driven by the revelations at the monolith, Erin resolved to delve deeper into the mysteries surrounding the First Ones. Her initial awe quickly transformed into a burning determination to piece together their story, driven by the haunting familiarity of the figure she'd encountered. Returning to Kaeldar, she began combing through the village archives, poring over dusty scrolls and brittle manuscripts stored in the dim recesses of the Elders' Hall. Each document offered fragments of insight, references to celestial alignments, mentions of the Watchers who guided early settlers, and cryptic warnings about forgetting one's origins. Yet, the written records only scratched the surface. Erin soon realized that much of what remained of the first ones existed outside the confines of ink and parchment. Village elders, wary of her growing obsession, reluctantly shared oral histories passed down through generations. One tale recounted how the first ones would appear during times of great need, their presence heralded by auroras that painted the night sky in hues never seen since. Another described their departure as sudden and unexplained, leaving behind tools and structures too advanced for mortal hands to replicate. Armed with this patchwork of knowledge, Erin turned her attention to the physical remnants scattered across the forest. Ancient ruins, long abandoned and reclaimed by nature, became her new hunting grounds. She meticulously documented every artifact she uncovered, from shards of iridescent pottery to fragments of metallic alloys that resisted corrosion. Each discovery added another layer to the puzzle, painting a picture of a civilization both astonishingly advanced and profoundly connected to the natural world. But it wasn't just objects that fascinated her, it was the recurring motifs in their craftsmanship. Spirals, circles, and interlocking patterns dominated everything from carvings on stone tablets to designs woven into tattered tapestries. These symbols seemed to echo the swirling glyphs on the monolith, suggesting a universal language or code. Erin spent countless nights sketching and analyzing them, convinced they held the key to understanding the first one's purpose, and perhaps their ultimate fate. As weeks turned into months, Erin noticed changes within herself. Her dreams grew vivid, populated by shadowy figures speaking in melodic tones she couldn't quite grasp upon waking. During her waking hours, she sometimes caught fleeting glimpses of movement out of the corner of her eye, shapes that dissolved into nothingness when she turned to look. At first, she dismissed these phenomena as fatigue or overactive imagination, but they persisted, growing more frequent and insistent. One evening, as twilight settled over Kaeldar, Erin sat alone by the hearth, tracing the spiral patterns she'd copied from the artifacts onto a scrap of parchment. The fire crackled softly, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Suddenly, the room seemed to tilt slightly, as though reality itself had shifted. The air thickened, carrying with it a scent reminiscent of rain-soaked earth after a storm. Before she could react, a voice, not audible, but resonating directly in her mind, spoke. "You are searching for us." Startled, Erin dropped the parchment, her heart pounding wildly. She scanned the room, finding no one. The voice continued, calm and measured. "Why do you seek what has been lost?" I want to understand," she stammered aloud, unsure if her words would reach whoever, or whatever, was addressing her. "You left behind pieces of yourselves, traces we can't ignore. We're connected to you, aren't we? Why did you vanish?" For a moment, there was silence, heavy and expectant. Then the voice replied, "To protect. To guide. To wait." "Wait for what?" Erin pressed, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and exhilaration. "For those ready to remember." Before she could respond, the sensation intensified. The firelight dimmed, replaced by a soft, ethereal glow emanating from nowhere and everywhere at once. Shadows coalesced into forms, tall, luminous figures that hovered just beyond the edge of clarity. They moved gracefully, their presence commanding yet gentle. Though their features remained indistinct, Erin recognized them instantly, the same beings depicted on the monolith. Their eyes, pools of infinite depth, locked onto hers, and she felt an overwhelming surge of emotions. Longing, sorrow, hope. Then, as abruptly as it began, the vision faded. The fire roared back to life, and the room returned to normalcy. But Erin knew she had crossed a threshold. The first ones were not merely echoes of the past. They were aware, watching, waiting. And somehow, impossibly, they had chosen her. Erin's encounters with the first ones ignited a transformation within her, reshaping not only her perception of the world but also her role within it. She began to see connections everywhere. In the rhythm of the river flowing past Kaeldar, in the constellations that wheeled overhead, and even in the laughter of children playing in the village square. Patterns emerged where none had seemed to exist before, weaving together threads of existence into a tapestry far grander than she had imagined. It was as though the first ones had awakened a latent awareness within her, granting her glimpses of the intricate web binding all things. This newfound clarity brought with it a profound sense of responsibility. Erin understood now that the first one's departure hadn't been an abandonment but a necessary act, a stepping back to allow humanity to forge its own path while leaving behind subtle guidance for those who sought it. Their message, though cryptic, was clear. Humanity carried their essence within, a dormant inheritance waiting to be claimed. To remember them was not merely to recall their deeds, but to awaken the dormant potential they had entrusted to future generations. Determined to share this revelation, Erin approached the elders of Kael'thar, hoping to inspire a collective awakening. But her words fell on skeptical ears. Many dismissed her accounts as fanciful imaginings born of isolation and obsession. Others regarded her with unease, fearing that delving too deeply into the First One's legacy might invite forces beyond comprehension. Only a handful listened intently, their expressions shifting from doubt to wonder as Erin recounted her visions and discoveries. Among these listeners was Taryn, a childhood friend whose quiet pragmatism often balanced Erin's boundless curiosity. Where others hesitated, Taryn embraced the possibility of truth in Erin's claims. Together, they devised a plan to rekindle the village's connection to the First Ones, beginning with small acts of remembrance. They organized gatherings beneath the stars, reviving ancient chants and dances once performed in honor of the vanished ancestors. Slowly, tentatively, the villagers began to participate, drawn by the sincerity in Erin's voice and the subtle shifts in atmosphere during these rituals. Yet, resistance lingered. Some accused Erin of tampering with sacred traditions, warning that her interpretations risked angering unseen powers. Others simply refused to believe, clinging to the comfort of routine and familiarity. Despite these challenges, Erin pressed on, driven by the conviction that humanity's survival depended on reclaiming its forgotten heritage. She sensed that the First One's guidance extended beyond Kael'thar, that their influence reached far beyond the forest, touching lives across distant lands. If she could ignite a spark here, perhaps it might spread outward, igniting a broader awakening. And so, Erin continued her work, weaving the threads of past and present into a narrative that transcended time. Each step forward revealed new questions, each answer unlocking further mysteries. The journey was far from over, but she no longer walked it alone. With every shared story, every ritual performed, and every artifact uncovered, the bond between humanity and its ancestors grew stronger. The First Ones may have vanished long ago, but their presence endured, in the echoes of forgotten songs, in the whispers of the wind, and in the hearts of those brave enough to listen. As the seasons turned and the forest donned its autumnal hues, Erin's efforts began to ripple outward in ways she hadn't anticipated. The villagers who had once dismissed her as a dreamer now found themselves drawn to the story she told, the artifacts she uncovered, and the rituals she revived. It wasn't just curiosity that brought them, it was something deeper, an instinctive pull toward the truths she unearthed. Even those who remained skeptical couldn't deny the strange coincidences that seemed to accompany her work: crops thriving without explanation, illnesses fading inexplicably, and a sense of harmony settling over Kael'thar like a warm blanket. One evening, during a gathering beneath the harvest moon, Taryn approached Erin with a discovery of his own. He held out a small, intricately carved pendant, its surface etched with spirals and glyphs eerily similar to those on the monolith. "I found this near the riverbank," he said, his voice low but urgent. It was half buried in the mud, as if it had been waiting for someone to find it. Erin took the pendant gingerly, feeling the same faint warmth she had experienced at the monolith. As she examined it, images flickered in her mind, visions of water flowing endlessly, of hands shaping clay into vessels, and of faces illuminated by firelight. She looked up at Taryn, her eyes wide. "This isn't just an artifact," she whispered. "It's a key. A piece of something larger." Her words sparked a flurry of activity among the villagers. Inspired by the pendant's discovery, they began scouring the surrounding woods and fields for other relics. What started as a solitary quest became a communal effort, binding the people of Kael'thar together in ways they hadn't experienced in generations. Each new find, a shard of polished stone, a fragment of woven fabric, or a rusted tool unlike any they had seen before, added another layer to the unfolding mystery. And with each discovery, Aaron felt the presence of the First Ones growing stronger, their guidance becoming more tangible. But not everyone welcomed this shift. Among the dissenters was Elder Maris, a stern woman whose authority rested on centuries of tradition. To her, Aaron's actions represented a dangerous deviation from the sacred practices passed down through generations. "You meddle with forces you do not understand," she warned one evening, her voice sharp as flint. "The First Ones left us for a reason. Perhaps they knew we were unworthy of their wisdom." Aaron met her gaze steadily, though her heart raced. "Or perhaps they trusted us enough to leave behind clues, knowing we would rise to meet the challenge when the time came. We can't cling to fear forever, Elder Maris. If we do, we risk losing what little connection we still have." The elder's expression hardened, but she said nothing more. Her silence, however, did little to quell the unease spreading among some of the villagers. Whispers of doubt lingered in corners of the village, casting shadows over the newfound unity. Yet, even amidst the tension, there were moments of undeniable wonder. Moments when the boundaries between past and present blurred, leaving no room for skepticism. One such moment occurred during the Festival of Lights, a celebration traditionally marked by lanterns strung between trees and offerings placed at altars. That year, under Aaron's guidance, the festival took on a different tone. Instead of merely honoring the First Ones, the villagers sought to communicate with them. They gathered around the monolith, chanting ancient hymns reconstructed from fragments of oral history. The air grew thick with anticipation, charged with an energy that made the hairs on their arms stand on end. And then it happened. The monolith began to glow, brighter than ever before, its carvings pulsating with light. From within the stone emerged figures, not solid, but translucent, shimmering like heat waves rising from sun-baked earth. Their forms were unmistakable, tall, elegant, and achingly familiar. They moved silently among the crowd, their presence both comforting and awe-inspiring. No one spoke, no one dared to breathe. For a fleeting moment, the divide between humanity and its ancestors dissolved entirely. When the vision faded, the villagers stood frozen, tears streaming down many faces. Elder Maris herself was visibly shaken, her usual stoicism cracked open by what she had witnessed. Though she offered no apology, her resistance softened, allowing Aaron's influence to deepen further. Encouraged by these breakthroughs, Aaron and Taryn decided to venture beyond Kael'thar, seeking traces of the First Ones in neighboring lands. They believed that understanding their legacy required looking beyond the confines of the forest, piecing together a broader narrative that spanned cultures and geographies. With a group of trusted companions, they set out on foot, carrying maps sketched from memory and hearts brimming with purpose. Their journey led them across rolling plains dotted with ancient ruins, through mountain passes where winds carried whispers of forgotten tongues, and into bustling towns where tales of vanished ancestors bore striking similarities to those of Kael'thar. Everywhere they went, they encountered echoes of the First Ones, in the architecture of crumbling temples, in the folklore shared around campfires, and in the dreams of strangers who claimed to hear voices calling them to remember. In one village nestled beside a vast lake, they met a healer named Lyra, whose knowledge of medicinal plants rivaled Aaron's own. Lyra spoke of visions that guided her work, showing her remedies hidden in plain sight. When Aaron showed her the pendant, Lyra gasped, recognizing its symbols from carvings in her family's ancestral home. Together, they deciphered part of its meaning, uncovering instructions for creating a potion said to enhance clarity of thought and strengthen bonds between individuals. Testing it cautiously, they discovered its effects were real and profound. Word of their discoveries spread, drawing others to join their cause. Scholars, artisans, and wanderers alike flocked to their growing caravan, each bringing unique skills and insights. What had begun as a personal quest for Aaron evolved into a movement, uniting disparate peoples under a shared mission, to reclaim the wisdom of the First Ones and use it to heal a fractured world. Yet, with every step forward, challenges arose. Not all encounters were friendly. Some viewed their efforts as threats to established power structures. Others feared awakening forces better left undisturbed. And always, lingering doubts gnawed at the edges of their resolve. Could humanity truly live up to the legacy of its ancestors? Or were they destined to repeat the mistakes of the past? Despite these uncertainties, Aaron pressed on, driven by the belief that the answers lay not in perfection but in perseverance. The First Ones had entrusted humanity with a gift, a spark of their essence meant to guide and inspire. Whether humanity chose to nurture that spark or let it fade depended on the choices they made, both individually and collectively. As the caravan traveled onward, the horizon stretched endlessly before them, promising untold mysteries and revelations. The journey was far from over, but Aaron knew one thing for certain. The path ahead was theirs to forge, shaped by the lessons of those who had come before. And so, with hope burning brightly in their hearts, they walked forward, ready to embrace whatever awaited them. The caravan's journey took them to the edge of a vast desert, where dunes stretched endlessly like waves frozen in time. The air shimmered with heat, distorting the horizon into a mirage of possibilities. It was here that Aaron first felt the pull, a deep, resonant hum vibrating through her bones, as though the earth itself were calling her name. She paused mid-step, her companions halting behind her as she turned her gaze toward the heart of the sands. "There's something out there," she murmured, clutching the pendant tightly in her hand. Its warmth had grown almost unbearable, pulsing in rhythm with the strange vibration beneath their feet. "We need to follow it." Taran exchanged uneasy glances with Lyra and the others. The desert was unforgiving, its shifting sands known to swallow entire caravans without a trace. Yet none dared question Aaron, not after all they had witnessed. If the first ones were guiding her, then they would trust her lead. 4 days, they trudged across the scorching expanse, their supplies dwindling and their spirits tested by the relentless sun. But just when despair began to creep into their ranks, the landscape shifted. Rising from the sands like a phantom was a structure unlike anything they had ever seen, a colossal pyramid made of obsidian-like stone, its surface smooth and reflective, catching the light in dazzling bursts. At its base stood an archway carved with spirals and glyphs identical to those on the monolith in Kaeldar. Aaron approached cautiously, her breath catching as she stepped beneath the arch. The moment she crossed the threshold, the world seemed to shift. The oppressive heat vanished, replaced by a cool stillness that defied logic. Inside, the pyramid opened into a cavernous chamber illuminated by an otherworldly glow emanating from crystalline formations embedded in the walls. In the center of the room floated a massive orb, translucent and humming softly, as if alive. "It's beautiful," Lyra whispered, awestruck. Before anyone could stop her, Aaron reached out and touched the orb. Instantly, the chamber erupted in light, flooding their minds with visions so vivid they felt real. They saw cities suspended between stars, rivers flowing upward into skies ablaze with auroras, and beings, human yet not, working in harmony with forces beyond comprehension. These were the first ones, but they were more than mere ancestors. They were stewards of creation itself, tasked with maintaining balance across realms unseen by ordinary eyes. Then came the warning. The images shifted, showing destruction, wars waged over power, knowledge twisted into weapons, and worlds collapsing under the weight of greed and hubris. The first ones had intervened, sealing away fragments of their essence to prevent further catastrophe. Humanity, left behind, had forgotten its purpose, drifting farther from the path intended for it. When the vision subsided, Aaron staggered back, tears streaming down her face. "They didn't abandon us," she choked out. "They sacrificed themselves to save us." Her words hung heavy in the air, stirring a mix of emotions among the group. Hope mingled with sorrow, determination with fear. The burden of this revelation settled onto their shoulders, heavier than any physical weight. If humanity was to reclaim its connection to the first ones, it would require more than remembrance. It would demand transformation. As they prepared to leave the pyramid, Aaron noticed something new: inscriptions etched into the floor around the orb. Unlike the swirling patterns elsewhere, these were stark and angular, forming what appeared to be coordinates or directions. With Lyra's help, they transcribed the markings, realizing they pointed to locations scattered across the globe. Each site, Aaron believed, held another piece of the puzzle, a fragment of the first one's legacy waiting to be rediscovered. Their next destination lay far to the east, in a land of dense jungles and towering mountains. The journey would be perilous, fraught with unknown dangers, but no one hesitated. The vision of the first one's sacrifice had ignited a fire within them, driving them forward with renewed purpose. Along the way, they encountered tribes who spoke of similar legends, of celestial beings who once walked among mortals, leaving behind relics imbued with extraordinary power. Some welcomed the travelers warmly, sharing their stories and offering guidance. Others viewed them with suspicion, testing their resolve before granting passage. One such tribe, hidden deep within the jungle, revealed a secret that sent shivers down Aaron's spine. Their elders spoke of a prophecy, a time when descendants of the first ones would rise to restore balance, guided by signs written in the stars. When shown the pendant, the elders fell silent, their expressions unreadable. Finally, the eldest among them nodded gravely. "You are the ones foretold," he said. "But beware, the road ahead is fraught with trials. Not all will survive." His words lingered long after they departed, casting a shadow over their progress. True to his warning, challenges mounted as they ventured deeper into the wilderness. A sudden storm forced them to take shelter in caves where ancient murals depicted battles between light and darkness. Predatory beasts stalked them at night, their glowing eyes reflecting moonlight like shards of glass. And always, there was the gnawing sense that they were being watched, not by enemies, but by something older, wiser, and infinitely patient. Despite these hardships, bonds within the group grew stronger. Taran proved invaluable as a strategist, his calm demeanor steadying nerves during moments of crisis. Lyra's healing skill saved lives more times than anyone could count, while scholars among them deciphered clues hidden in artifacts and texts. Even those initially skeptical of Aaron's mission found themselves transformed, their doubts giving way to a shared belief in the importance of their quest. At last, they reached the foothills of the eastern mountains, where jagged peaks pierced the sky like spears. Here, according to the coordinates, lay another fragment of the first one's legacy. As they ascended, the air grew thin and cold, yet the sense of anticipation intensified. Near the summit, they discovered a temple carved directly into the rock, its entrance flanked by statues resembling the figures from the monolith. Inside, they found not an artifact, but a test, a series of trials designed to challenge their courage, wisdom, and unity. Each trial pushed them to their limits, forcing them to confront fears and insecurities they had buried long ago. For Aaron, the final test was the most harrowing. Alone in a chamber bathed in golden light, she faced a mirror that reflected not her own image, but that of a first one. Its eyes bore into hers, searching, judging. "Are you worthy?" it asked, its voice echoing in her mind. "Will you honor our sacrifice, or squander it as others have done?" Tears streamed down her face as memories flooded her, the faces of those who had joined her, the sacrifices they had made, the hope they carried. "I don't know if I'm worthy," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But I swear I'll try. I'll do everything in my power to ensure your gift isn't wasted." The figure studied her for a moment longer, then nodded. "Then take this," it said, placing a shard of crystal in her hands. "It is a fragment of our essence, a spark of what we were. Guard it well, for it holds both promise and peril." When Aaron emerged from the temple, the shard glowing faintly in her grasp, her companions greeted her with cheers and embraces. But she knew their journey was far from over. The shard was only one piece of many, each hidden in places as dangerous and mysterious as the last. And with every step closer to completing the puzzle, the stakes grew higher. Yet, even as uncertainty loomed, Aaron felt a quiet certainty taking root within her. The first ones had entrusted humanity with their legacy, believing in its potential despite its flaws. Now it was up to her, and those who walked beside her, to prove that faith justified. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, carrying the light of the past into the uncharted future. As the shard pulsed in her hand, Aaron realized the true weight of their mission, to unite humanity under a shared purpose. The trials had forged them into something greater than themselves, a beacon of hope in a fractured world. Together, they descended the mountain, the horizon aglow with the promise of dawn. Each step forward was a vow, to honor the first ones, to heal the wounds of the past, and to build a future worthy of their sacrifice. Though challenges awaited, their resolve burned brighter than ever. The journey would be long, but they no longer walked alone. The echoes of their ancestors guided them still. And as the sun rose, casting its light across the land, Aaron whispered a silent prayer of gratitude.